trivia knowledge in that sense, so I would need to do extra research on those sports. I don't want to come on the show and try and act like and try to sound like I know what I'm talking about, when the reality is that I just did a bunch of research on my computer. Well, that's a fourth wall break, isn't it? Let's just get into the show. I got a great one for you today. Again, I hope you guys are having a fantastic week so far, and I hope that you are enjoying yourselves, and thank you so much for the support, as always. Let's dive right into the college basketball. Jalen Johnson, forward for the Duke Blue Devils, is opting out of the rest of his season with the Blue Devils. There was a joint press release from Johnson, from the university, and from Coach K talking about his decision. Johnson has been battling a foot injury. He's been out for at least 3 weeks or something like that. He's been in and out of the lineup, and he only played 23 minutes in the last 2 games before he opted out, and he only had like 3 points, a couple of assists. He wasn't playing like himself, that's for sure. And Johnson obviously is a lottery pick. A lot of those one and dones from Duke do tend to be lottery picks. He is supposed to be, or projected to be, a top 15 pick in this upcoming draft, so he's taking the time to step away, opt out for the rest of the season, and prepare himself for the NBA draft that is going to be coming up later this year. Duke is 9-8 on the season, more than likely going to miss the NCAA tournament for the first time in an eternity. I actually looked this up because I said this nonchalantly, and I said, man, I don't think the Duke basketball team has missed an NCAA tournament since before I was born. And sure enough, I was actually right. The last time that the Duke basketball team missed the NCAA tournament was in 1996, and I was born in 1997. So Duke has legitimately not missed an NCAA tournament appearance since before I was born, and that's crazy to me. And with that being said, that is why this decision by Jalen Johnson is making so much headlining news. Not necessarily headline news, but it's causing a little bit of a debate in the sports world, because of the situation of the Duke basketball team, what they're going through, what this season has been for pretty much the entire sports world, with COVID, with health and safety protocols, with games being moved, games being postponed, players not being able to practice with each other all the time. And, of course, as I said, Duke is going 9-8 this season, and pretty much all of the blue blood colleges, the powerful colleges in the sport of college basketball, Duke, North Carolina, Kentucky, they are all mightily struggling this season. And it begs the question, is Jalen Johnson quitting on his teammates? Now, I don't think we would be asking this question if Duke was 16-1 and Johnson was genuinely hurt, which he is genuinely hurt, but I'm talking something more along the lines of maybe something more serious, like an Achilles tear, an ACL tear, a broken bone, or a strain, or an ankle sprain. I'm not quite sure what the foot injury is. I actually didn't dig that far into it, but regardless of that, if it was a more serious injury, I don't think people would be making as big of a fuss about this. If Duke was going 16-1 and Johnson got injured, I don't know how people would react, but because Duke and other schools like Duke are struggling so mightily this season, it gives off the perception that Johnson is quitting on his teammates, and people will dig up information, go and say, look, he quit on the IMG Academy before even playing a game with them and went to a completely different school. You know, 2 things. Who are we to judge what this young man does? I mean, sure, we can be fans of the sport, we can be fan of Duke, we can be fans of college basketball, but who are we to judge what this young man does when reality is that he's just a kid. He's trying to fight and figure out who he is as a person and try and figure out his future. And obviously the future has great potential for Jalen Johnson. He has the potential to be an NBA player, which is certainly something that a lot of people cannot say that they have the ability to do. And for me, it really just goes back to the basic argument that we have been talking about for years on end since this rule was implemented into the NBA, and this is why or why not players should be able to go directly from high school to the NBA. It's that same argument, but just under a different light because of how poorly Duke basketball is doing, the context of the season that they are playing with college basketball, and what type of circumstances he's leaving the team on. And this is exactly why players should have the ability to go directly from high school to the NBA, because people tend to forget that college is nothing more than a glorified pit stop for these players. With the enactment of the rule that players need at least 1 year of college experience, that is a massive underplayment of the sport of college basketball, it really devalues the sport, and it leads to situations like this in which players, rightfully so, if they have the potential and they have the stock in themselves in order to do something like this, it just becomes a situation in which college becomes a pit stop for these players, whether they like to admit it or not. Now, I'm not going to say that Johnson's, heartfelt statement about, always loving Duke and always going to be remembering the brotherhood that he found with those players. I kind of want to border on the line of saying that's kind of some promotional bull. Sure, maybe he's made some friends on the team. Obviously, Duke is a fantastic university with fantastic facilities. He has had the best of the best, but I don't know how much I would buy, that, I'm going to remember this brotherhood forever. A lot of that I think, is promotional BS to try and smooth over the situation, but still, that doesn't mean that he's making the wrong decision. I think he's making the right decision in this case. And, again, we wouldn't be having this conversation if NBA or if players were allowed to go directly from high school to the NBA. Because, again, when it comes to college for these one and dones, it just matters what kind of pit stop you want your college pit stop to be. Do you want the Duke 5-star motel that has a complimentary breakfast, is fully decorated inside and out, and has an indoor pool? Or do you want a more run-down 3-star motel, but one that gives you the best night of sleep that you've ever had in your entire life? Really, it just depends on the player. It depends on what their attributes are, their personality is, how much winning matters. Because it really does not matter where these kids go to school. It might matter to them in terms of what they want personality-wise. If they want to win, it matters. Depending on what coach you want to learn from, it matters. If you want to build a brotherhood, if you want to play there for multiple years, it matters. If you want to learn to play basketball better, it matters. But if your mindset is purely on the NBA and going to the NBA, nobody could give less of two craps where you played college. They're not going to remember where you even played college unless, they're very, super knowledgeable about the sport, and they're not going to know where you played college unless the little title tag or that little text bar comes on screen when you're about to shoot a free throw, tells people that, you went to college at Kentucky. A casual basketball fan is not going to give two craps where you went to college. So it really just does not matter where these players go to college. It's a glorified pit stop. And as much as people want to label Jalen Johnson as a quitter for opting out of the rest of the season, the only reason that that's even being a conversation is because Duke is doing so poorly. This is the work that Duke has done in the last, close to 24, 25 years. None of this would be a conversation if that were not true to begin with. So I think it's very unfair for Jalen Johnson to be labeled as a quitter. I don't think he's quitting on his team. I think he's taking he's making a calculated decision on his future that really anybody would be making if they were in his position. And the only reason that Johnson is having to make that decision is because he is required to spend a year in college. And if he were allowed to go straight to the NBA from high school, say if he were doing this in high school, if he was opting out on the rest of his season in high school to play, to heal up, to get ready to go to the NBA, nobody would be saying anything. But because college basketball is a little bit different and players are required to play college basketball, that's where things become a little bit different, and that's where the arguments start to happen. So is Johnson running out his teammates? No, he's making the right decision, but this wouldn't even be a problem if players were allowed to go straight to the NBA from high school to begin with. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching this segment from the Hard Headed Sports Podcast. You've heard what I've had to say, now I'm interested to hear what you think as well. If you enjoyed this highlight from the show and want to watch more highlights from the show as they come out after the show's completion, you should definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel, and if you're interested in listening to the entire show in its full-length entirety, you should follow the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Anchor. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you all very soon.